Are you a perfectionist, or are you trying to figure out if you're a perfectionist? Well, today we're going to talk all about perfectionism. First, we'll start with some traits that perfectionists might have. Then we'll talk about some unusual or unexpected ways that perfectionism can show up, why perfectionism is there in the first place, and then lastly we'll finish with what to do about perfectionism and how to help yourself if you do struggle with perfectionism. So stay tuned. First of all, are you a perfectionist? Well, I'm going to share with you some common traits of perfectionists. All or nothing thinking, so thinking that you're either perfect or a failure. Overanalyzing and overthinking, being self-critical, obsessing over details, having high standards or high expectations for self and others, a tendency to procrastinate, indecisiveness, fear of failure, often not feeling good enough, avoiding conflict, and people-pleasing. So what are some ways that perfectionism can show up? Particularly unexpected or atypical ways that perfectionism might show up in our lives. Firstly, it could show up as procrastination. A lot of the times, perfectionists procrastinate because they feel like this task is so big and it has to be so perfect that it feels overwhelming. So procrastination is a natural result of just feeling overwhelmed and feeling like it has to be just right. It can also show up as discomfort with rest or relaxation. Perfectionists might feel like every minute of the day has to be perfect or has to be productive, and so when you're resting or you're relaxing, it feels really uncomfortable or you feel like you're not doing the things that you need to be doing. It could also show up as social anxiety, feeling like you need to always say the perfect thing or come off the right way to people or not offend people. When I first learned about this one, it kind of blew my mind because I never really made that connection before, but a lot of the times people who think things have to be just right, that might manifest as being socially anxious. It could also come out as hyperfixation on appearance, looking in the mirror and noticing every little thing that you don't like about your face, or spending way too long trying to cover up a blemish or get your hair just right could be a part of perfectionism. Another way perfectionism can show up is in conflict avoidance. Conflict feels really uncomfortable, but it can also often feel like a failure. If you're having a conflict with someone, it might feel like, oh no, I did something wrong, or they don't like me. And if you tend to have perfectionist traits, you want everything to go smoothly. So conflict feels like a disruption to that. It may also show up as decision paralysis, feeling like you need to make the perfect decision or the right decision. And a lot of the times the decisions we make, there's no wrong or right answer. So if we are having a hard time making a decision because we want it to be perfect or right, that could be a result of perfectionism. Another interesting way perfectionism could show up is through feeling like you have to earn love or friendship. Feeling like in order for someone to see you as a good friend or a good partner, you have to do everything exactly right. You are not allowed to make mistakes, or you're not allowed to have conflict with that person. That could be interpreted as a failure to someone who is a perfectionist. And lastly, perfectionism can show up as a difficulty in asking for help, especially if you want to come across in a perfect or right way. It can feel vulnerable and scary to ask for help. And someone who puts a lot of importance on feeling like you have to do everything right and the right way. Obviously, it's going to be really hard to ask for help if you feel like you should be doing things the right way and you should know what to do. Now let's talk about why perfectionism exists in the first place. What is the cause of it? What's the root? Obviously, this could be different for everybody, but here are some common roots to the perfectionism issue. I think one of the reasons is it feels productive to be perfectionist. We feel like, even on an unconscious level, it's helping us be the best person that we can be. It's pushing us. It's making sure we're doing right. This isn't inherently a bad thing, but it does become really overwhelming and stressful when every mistake we make reflects our nature. We feel like it reflects our character. In reality, life is messy and mistakes are a really normal and natural part of the process. And if we have perfectionist tendencies, it can be easier to fall into a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset and saying, oh, I could learn something from this, or what can I do better next time? Another reason perfectionism might exist is the way that we grew up or the way that our parents or caregivers responded to us. If good behavior or good grades were highly emphasized and bad behavior and bad grades were severely punished, it can start to feel like we have to be good all the time and do the right thing all the time. Otherwise, something bad's gonna happen. And this could also send the message that love or affection is earned, that we only get love or affection when we do the right thing. For example, hearing things like, oh, you got straight A's, I'm so proud of you. That's not inherently a bad thing, but if it's combined with shaming for doing the wrong thing or punishment for doing the wrong thing, or if that's the only time or one of the main times that you received affection or love growing up was when you did good things, then children begin to pick up on that message of like, oh, I have to be good and right in order for my parent or caregiver to love me or to make me feel good. So this is in contrast to a response maybe being, you know what, you didn't make straight A's and yeah, I'm a little disappointed and I want you to be doing well, but I saw how hard you tried and you did a great job at working hard for this. What are some things you need? What can we do to help you to get better grades next time? It's important to note that a lot of caregivers and parents have good intentions. It's just the message that's received by the child, it's received in a different way than an adult might perceive it. The brains aren't quite fully developed enough to really understand, oh, of course my worth isn't based on my grades or my behavior. Perfectionism can also come from unpredictable environments. If you think about it, perfectionism is a way to feel like you're in control, or a way to try to maintain control. If parents or caregivers were really reactive, or you weren't really sure how they were going to respond to something, a lot of the times good behavior is a way to keep parents calm or happy. Another possible cause of perfectionism is having a talent or academic-based identity. You were labeled as the smart one or the musical prodigy, and this became kind of like how people saw you or what people expected from you. So then all this pressure is put on you to always be good at that or to always be doing that thing in order to maintain that identity, in order to maintain maybe even the praise that comes along with that identity. Also, if things just come naturally to you, or if school was easy for you, or if you got good grades, I see this a lot. Like if school's easy for you and then all of a sudden you're in the real world and it's like, we don't really live in a system where they give you A's and B's based on your work. That can really lead to imposter syndrome or feeling like you're not doing good enough or just feeling like you're not doing a good job because, oh, this didn't come easy to me, so I'm bad at it and I'm a failure. And then lastly, we'll talk about some personality traits that might contribute to being a perfectionist. High sensitivity, being analytical or detail-oriented, being really self-aware, self-disciplined, being a planner, and being highly conscientious. So if you relate to few or all of these different reasons that perfectionism might come along, then there is a chance you could be a perfectionist. And I really think perfectionism comes from a combination of all these things, our personality traits, the way that we grew up, the messages that were sent to us as children, and even throughout our adult lives and society. There's really a variety of ways that could contribute to perfectionism. Lastly, we're going to talk about what do you do? Now we have all this knowledge, so how do we fix it? How do we get to a place where we don't feel this perfectionism pressure so that we can actually enjoy our lives a little more? Firstly, challenging all or nothing thinking can be helpful. When you notice yourself feeling like something has to be perfect or failure, practice being in the middle, in the gray area. Practice the power of and. I did a good job on this and it could have been better. Next, reframe what mistakes and failures actually are. They're opportunities to learn. They're inevitable parts of being alive and being a human. And if that feels really hard for you to do, then just ask yourself the question, if I had to choose one thing I learned from this, what would it be? It's really not about whether you experience setbacks or not. It's about how you respond to them. Oftentimes, frustration with failure or a mistake leads to checking out or not actually doing what we want to do. But if you're thinking of it as a learning opportunity, that motivates us more and actually makes us do better. Next, try setting realistic expectations. A lot of the times, perfectionists tend to set really high bar for themselves and for other people. This kind of goes back to the being in the gray area thing. Sometimes people will fail us. Sometimes we don't do good at our job. Does that mean that you are a failure? Does that mean that you're a bad person? No. Also, when it comes to things like school and work, a lot of the times perfectionists tend to take on a lot of responsibility. So setting realistic expectations could also come with maybe not putting so many expectations on yourself or so many responsibilities on yourself. Ask yourself, is this really something that I want to be doing? Or is it just because I feel like I should be doing it? Next, practicing self-compassion can be really powerful for people who experience perfectionism. Ask yourself how you would respond to a friend in these situations, or what you might say to someone you really love and care about. Give yourself some grace. Tell yourself, of course I'm not gonna get this right every single time. What am I, a robot? No, I'm a human being, and it's gonna happen sometimes. Another thing that might help with perfectionism is practice making mistakes or not doing things perfectly on purpose. If you have a paper to write, practice not editing it for an hour afterwards or submitting an okay paper. paper. Maybe just spontaneously writing or creating something and then sending it to somebody and trying not to edit or overthink. Next, practicing being okay with uncertainty or the unknown. A lot of perfectionism can come from wanting to control because control makes us feel safe. But the reality is we cannot know what might happen. We cannot know everything about a situation. So just remind yourself that whatever happens, I can handle it. It might be uncomfortable, I might not like it, but I can bear it. And lastly, if you really struggle with perfectionism and you notice it's really affecting your life, it might be best to seek support from a therapist or a professional. And by the way, I really enjoy working with people who identify with perfectionism. I do have a link in my bio if you want to work with me. Shameless promotion there. But sometimes that is the push or the motivation that somebody needs to start reframing their thinking around perfectionism. Well, that's all I have for you today on perfectionism. I really hope you enjoyed this video and that it was helpful for you in some way. If it was, please like, share, and subscribe, and check out my links down below. I post videos on Fridays about music therapy, counseling, expressive arts, all that fun stuff. So I hope to see you in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.